All right, Alexander, let's do an update on what's going on in Yemen with MBS and the war there, the war that Saudi Arabia is waging against Yemen with the help of the United States. And I guess you could say that Yemen, there is the suspicion that Yemen is being helped and aided by Iran. So you have this kind of dynamic in Yemen, but it's led to a humanitarian catastrophe there. So what's the latest with Saudi Arabia, with Yemen, and with Iran?
Well, MBS, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, who, to be very clear, launched this war in 2015. I mean, he actively intervened in Yemen in order to try to assert Saudi dominance over the country and to control its government. He has now seen that the war in Yemen is going incredibly badly. He's lost the support of his key Arab ally, which is the United Arab Emirates, which has pulled out of the war. He sees that the Houthis, who are the force that is backed by Iran and which has been fighting Saudi Arabia and the Saudi-led and established Yemeni government, are on the advance and are in fact winning the war. And he's now trying to come up with some kind of peace deal. Only, of course, the peace deal which he has proposed, which would involve a ceasefire and negotiations, is one which the Houthis, who are winning, have rejected, because they say that in order for there to be a deal done with Saudi Arabia must lift its blockade on the airports in Yemen and on the port city of Hodeidah, through which most of Yemen's imports and foreign trade is conducted. And this is something that MBS is very, very reluctant to do. So MBS is trying to extricate himself from this war. The war has gone very badly wrong. The Houthis are in the ascendant. The UAE is pulling out. And, of course, he also senses that the Biden administration, which has been supporting Saudi Arabia over the course of this war, is now beginning to become increasingly nervous about continuing its support, because it senses that Saudi Arabia cannot win, and it worries that if the war drags on for very much longer, then the Houthis will continue their advance, and that could in time put the entire position of Saudi Arabia itself in some jeopardy. So my sense is that we are coming towards the final period of this war. I think that the very fact that MBS is now starting to edge towards some kind of peace deal means that some kind of Saudi pullout will happen. But the one thing I would also say is that though I think the Houthis will probably win and win completely and conclusively in North Yemen, South Yemen, which for much of the post-war era was an independent country under a Marxist-led government and which has been at odds with North Yemen, could very well break away, and we could be back to the situation which existed up till the 1990s of two Yemeni states, one in the south around the port city of Aden, and the other in the north around Sana'a, the one in the north controlled by the Houthis and in a kind of alliance with Iran, the one in the south perhaps under greater influence from countries like the UAE. So I think we are starting to see the end of the war. But how that will fully come about and what the effect on MBS's position in Saudi Arabia will be, that remains to be seen.
Right. The end of the war, the end of MBS. The Biden doesn't want MBS sticking around, the Biden White House. So where does MBS go from here?
Well, that's a very good point, because, of course, MBS started the war. It was all intended, by the way, to legitimize his essential takeover of Saudi Arabia. He was defense minister at the time when the war was launched. And his father had just succeeded to the throne, and it was all supposed to be part of something which was called the Salman Doctrine, which is all about establishing Saudi Arabia as the major regional power, and it was all going to impress the other Saudi princes and all the people in Saudi Arabia with what a powerful country Saudi Arabia was when it was led by MBS, and it has failed catastrophically, as, by the way, all of MBS's ventures eventually fail. So it will result in a major loss of face for MBS within Saudi Arabia. And of course, Saudi Arabia, many of the Saudi princes have strong issues with MBS, and I can't help but think that a clear-cut Saudi defeat in Yemen, which is what we're looking at, is going to massively damage MBS's prestige and authority in Saudi Arabia and expose him to challenges from the other princes. Now, how that will work out and whether he will actually manage to cling on, or whether there will be so much anger in Saudi Arabia at the debacle that MBS has led Saudi Arabia into in Yemen, that he is eventually overthrown, which I just don't know. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But there is no doubt at all, to my mind, that the Biden administration would be delighted to see the back of MBS. They clearly don't trust him. They don't find him a reliable person in charge in Saudi Arabia. But it seems to me that they don't have any very obvious person to take over from him. And the risk is that removing MBS after MBS has concentrated so much power into his hands could be deeply destabilizing for Saudi Arabia itself, and could result in a deep political crisis in the kingdom, such as there hasn't been since the 1960s.
How does Iran and Israel see this?
Well, Iran will feel itself the big winner. I mean, from their point of view, a Saudi defeat in Yemen will mean an Iranian victory in Yemen. I mean, the Houthis are allied to Iran. I mean, Iran, if you read the Iranian media, they're absolutely clear-cut in their support for the Houthis. And if you look at some of the weapons that the Houthis have been fighting with, they either obviously come from Iran or are, in most cases, obvious copies of Iranian weapon systems, which they have been provided with the plans to build, no doubt, by the Iranians themselves. This is obviously the case, for example, with some of the drones that the Houthis have been using, which they've been using to attack Saudi oil and other facilities within Saudi Arabia itself. So Iran will feel that it has secured a major advance against Saudi Arabia, and of course it will have gained a potentially strong, or at least important, ally within the Arabian Peninsula itself, in a region actually very close to the Saudi heartland regions, where, you know, the holy places, Medina and Mecca, and even some of the more important Saudi cities. So it will be a very, very big win for Iran if there is a final and complete defeat of Saudi Arabia in Yemen. Now, the Israelis will look at this and they will be extremely concerned, because as far as the Israelis are concerned, Iran is the big enemy, the great adversary. Saudi Arabia is the secret de facto ally, and the Israelis will be extremely concerned at any expansion of Iranian influence in the Arabian Peninsula and within the broader Arab world. And I think that will incline the Israelis to take an even harder line against Iran, especially given that they sense that they don't have the full backing of the Biden administration behind them. So I'm afraid a Saudi defeat in Yemen is more likely to lead to Israeli attacks on Iran.
Yeah, and you also, it looks like in Israel you have a deadlock from the election results as well. So a lot of uncertainty there. And we'll even see if
Absolutely.
Netanyahu can form a government, which at the moment, going by exit polls, is up in the air.
Absolutely. But of course, the problem with that is whoever wins the election or whoever remains prime minister, whether Netanyahu remains prime minister or someone else becomes prime minister, the very fact that Israel is so politically divided tends to make for a more confrontational policy towards Iran from within Israel itself, because no Israeli government that has this sort of razor thin margin of support in the Israeli parliament can afford to look weak on Iran. And that will, I'm afraid, make attacks by Israel on Iran even more likely. And with a administration in Washington that looks less friendly to Israel than the previous Trump administration did, but also much weaker. I mean, where there is this power vacuum that we've discussed in Washington, which struggles to form clear policies. The Israelis may also feel that if they attack Iran, then they can get away with it because the US won't really know how to object strongly to it. So, frankly, a dangerous situation.
Yeah, just a lot of uncertainty. A lot of uncertainty there.
A
in the
lot of
region.
uncertainty.
That's bad.
But having said that, this has been a terrible war in Yemen. If it ends, however, destabilizing the results may turn out to be, in terms of the humanitarian crisis that there has been in Yemen, an end to the war must be counted a good thing. So I hope that there's ways found to diplomatically resolve these problems. But the war itself, the end of the war itself, is a good thing and should be seen so. Unfortunately, with a weak and disorganized administration in Washington, those diplomatic solutions to the problems may not be provided because if the United States isn't there, to broker deals and mediate between parties, it's very difficult to see who else can do it, who else can step in and do it in the place of the US.
Well, the end of the war is a good thing, but the problem that I'm seeing, listening to you, is that you may end up having the wider war end, the Saudi war, the Saudi direct war. Let's put it that way: the Saudi direct war end. But if you have a split country, then you run the risk of getting into a type of Libya scenario where you're going to have an eternal war, which will then once again branch out to a wider proxy war. Once again, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and
Absolutely.
It's the circle just goes on and on. It just renews itself. So that's the problem that I see. You don't have a who brokers the deal? Who's there? Biden White House? No,
Yes, exactly.
Of course not. Who?
Well, no, of course not. Exactly who? That is the problem. I mean, nobody trusts anybody else in this region. Saudi Arabia is at odds with Iran. Israel is at odds with Iran. Iran looks a winner in Yemen. That will therefore incline other parties like the UAE to try and engineer a split with Yemen. Within Yemen, Yemen looks unstable, however this thing shapes out. Without a strong outside party, a disinterested outside party, looking to act as a sort of honest broker and negotiate peace between the various parties, very easy to see how this could actually turn out even worse than it is already, which, to be very clear, is extremely bad. It also goes back to the catastrophic failure that was made by the the Obama administration, when they basically sat back in 2015 and gave the green light to MBS when he launched this war in Yemen in the first place. I mean, that was a disastrous, bad move by the Obama administration, and it's going to live to haunt the whole region.
All right, we'll leave it there. Alexander Merkurs, thank you very much. Guys, make sure that you're still subscribed to this channel. Make sure to hit that like button. Check us out on Odyssey, on BitChute, and on Rumble. And make sure to go to the Duran shop. Pick up some great merchandise. And also support our video sponsor, Affirm. Use the code Duran10. You will get the best health and lifestyle products from Affirm. You will see those products on your screen right now. 10% discount when you use the code Duran10 on all Affirm products. You will find the link for everything in the description box down below.
Absolutely. Can I say they're beautifully packaged, as they could see. It's Affirm, based in California. It's in the United States. Its products can be supplied right around the world. They are wonderful products. I now use them regularly whenever I have aches and pains or other things, and I find that they work remarkably well. They're also recommended to me, by the way, by my own doctor and by my own pharmacy. So they're not yet on general sale in Britain. So if you actually come to follow our link, you can get them quickly now, and probably at a better deal than you might in the future, when I'm sure they will be on general sale in the UK too. They are wonderful products, wonderfully well made, beautifully packaged, and they do make you feel much better, especially when you face all the strains and stresses and aches and pains that come with life in the modern world.
All right. Take care, everybody.